I needed to write a book that would actually change perspectives and the way people see MPD, multiple
Yes.
personality disorder.
Yeah.
So
Welcome to Wild and Finally Fucking Free, hosted by me, soul-fueled storyteller Kylie Fatchett. We dive into the truth-talking, unedited stories of metamorphosis, growth, and evolution. I deeply believe that sharing our stories holds transformative magic. Join us to listen to future humans, change agents, extraordinary ordinary people, healers and paradigm shifters as we honour the power of our messy, magical stories. Let's get wild and finally fucking free together.
Hello and welcome to the podcast, everybody. Welcome back. I am so excited about this next guest. I have been looking forward to interviewing her for 2 months. Hello and welcome, author Maggie Walters. How are you?
I'm great today in a warm, sunny northern New South Wales day. It's lovely.
Oh, you live in God's country,
It's
honestly.
pretty special. It's pretty special. I like it here.
Northern New South Wales has got a piece of my heart. A lot of my family's from there.
Oh, okay. There you go.
Yeah.
We're tough. We've survived the floods and we're back and going in
I
full
was
swing. So we're doing
just
well.
about to say that. You're resilient, very
Yes.
resilient river people. Maggie, I first learned about you and your story and your book a few months ago. Would have been maybe 2 months ago. You appeared on the project
Yeah.
and your story and the presence with which you told it just sang to me. And I sent you a crazy voice note on Instagram.
Yes, you did.
Luckily, you didn't think anything of me. But can you introduce yourself for those people who don't already know you? And then we will just unfold wherever this magical chat wants to go.
Sure. My name is Maggie Walters. I am an author. I have recently debuted my first memoir, which is called Split, A Life Shared Living with Multiple Personality Disorder. At the ripe young age of 63, I've decided it's time to find my chosen career and start talking about this stuff and really getting it out there.
Amen. My goodness. So many places I want to go already. But the reason I wanted to have you on the show, first of all, your story and the way that you told it on the project really hit home to me for many reasons, from a generational trauma perspective, but also because I did spend a little bit of time in mental health recovery. And I just realized in my time working in that space that there's so much stigma around basic, I don't know whether basic is not the right term, but
Yeah.
more well-known mental imbalances like depression or anxiety. Then when you add in anything that's like schizophrenia or something a little bit more
Bipolar disorder, any of that sort of stuff.
bipolar,
Yeah.
multiple personality disorder,
Yeah.
like yourself, there is so much stigma. And we were just talking before we started recording, the bloody Hollywood has not helped.
No.
It was so refreshing to hear you share your story and basically just shine a light on how much bullshit people believe about things like this. But
Yeah.
also, like, I would imagine it takes a lot of internal resources to put this out into the public view. I'm not putting words in your mouth, does it? Or is it just time to share?
It's time to share.
Mm.
At 63, I've done a lot of healing. I'm on my fourth therapist,
Mm-hmm.
and I've clicked with this guy and have really discovered that writing for both myself and my alters is actually very healing.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people find it that way. I just have managed to kick it up the next notch and decide I needed to write a book that would actually change perspectives and the way people see MPD, multiple
Yes.
personality disorder.
Yeah.
So I tend to go back and forth between the two and call it MPD or DID. But to me, it's the same thing.
I actually didn't even realize that there was a new fresh term for MPD because even when
It's not that fresh. It changed in
Yeah.
1994.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
I
So-
worked in mental health recovery like 4 years ago.
Oh, okay. There you go.
I didn't hear
I
that
think
term.
it's just that people, and this I suspect that Hollywood hasn't helped this. People see it as MPD and they know it, and MPD just rolls off the tongue really easily.
Yes, that is true.
And
That is true.
it's just the common thing. So
Yeah.
yeah.
So how would you describe, let's talk in two different parts, MPD as the diagnosed kind of criteria of that, first of all, and then what I'm more interested in is your personal experience of living with this and I want to know whether when you get to your fifth therapist, whether you get that one for free or something. Like, surely there should be like a frequent flyer program.
Man, at my age, I sincerely hope this is my last therapist.
Yes, I
I'm
know,
not sure I could do.
tongue in
So,
cheek.
so therapeutic perspective, dissociative identity disorder, where you have multiple voices and alters living in your head,
Mhm.
all that sort of stuff. For the longest time, it's been called a psychosis. Now, I want to read you something, if you don't mind,
Yes, no, please
because
do.
it's from the foreword of my book, and a guy named George Blair West wrote it, and George is known as one of the foremost trauma and dissociative therapists in Australia. Just this one brief paragraph, and I just love it because it's really freeing. And what he said, if I were to capture DID in one sentence, I would say it's a testimony to how the human mind can really develop superpowers and fly away. This is the most important thing to understand about this condition, previously called multiple personality disorder. It is not a mental illness.
Mm,
This is worth repeating, as not only is it not intrinsically a mental illness, it is perhaps the most powerful adaptive response that the human mind is capable of when it is faced with the most destructive trauma that humans are capable of.
yeah,
And I love that
yeah.
because it takes it out of the you're psychotic category
Yes.
and makes it's adaptive. It's the way we deal with things. Because MPD really only develops in the mind of a child.
Oh,
You
okay.
might, and look, I'm only speaking from my perspective.
Yes.
So it's an uneducated, it's my personal story
Mhm.
perspective. I can't speak for the profession. So as I understand it, MPD can only develop in children, say under the age of 8 to 10. And it's one of the main reasons for that is because a child's mind is still it's so creative. It's got a lot of plasticity to it. It's malleable. It doesn't bear the constraints that you and I with our older brains have.
Mhm, mm.
So when they get stuck in a situation that is parental trauma, someone who's really close to them that has done that utter betrayal of them in whatever form, oftentimes it's sexual, but other times it's not, being betrayed by someone they should be able to trust.
Yes.
And
Yep.
it's causing them a lot of physical and emotional pain.
Mm.
And then the third thing about that is that they can't escape. The child, whether it's literal or figurative, they don't believe they can escape the
Yeah.
situation. So all they're left with is to go away in their mind,
Yeah. Yeah.
and somebody else comes out to deal with it. So to me, it's a creative adaptive response, and
Yep.
it's a bloody good one at that, quite
Wait, and
frankly.
how smart is that?
It's insanely smart. And I say that, I'm not trying to stroke my back or anything because I didn't go through the hell. My alters went through the hell.
Yeah.
I was safe, I was hidden away. But my goodness, I've got some pretty smart and cluey alters in my head.
Alters.
Yeah.
Yeah. As you're talking, I'm so glad that you bring this to the surface because there is a whole body of thought that ADHD is similarly a response to some sort of trauma, not
Yeah.
the level of trauma that we're talking about
Yeah.
here. But I always describe it as some of the things that I experienced, my brain decided was too painful, so it skittered away. Like that's to
Yeah.
me how ADHD feels
Yeah.
in my brain. I know that Gabor Mate has a whole body of thought saying that's a trauma response. What I really want to bring out for people listening is two things. A, this is not a psychosis. It's not a deficiency in the person that lives with this different way of actually dealing with reality. But also, it's actually a smart, protective, healthy mechanism
There you go.
because the other alternative is unsurvivable.
Absolutely.
So,
Absolutely. I have had someone call my alter superheroes. And said, actually, that's not quite right. They said, "You're a superhero because you were able to get through this." And I'm like, "Actually, no, it's my alters that are the superheroes." And I am absolutely convinced that if it weren't for the fact that they came into play, I wouldn't be alive today. If they didn't deal with the crap that I went through, I
Mm.
wouldn't be alive.
Yeah, because
So
it's
I'm very
unsurvivable.
grateful for my superheroes.
Can you explain? No, sorry. Let's go back a step because my second question before was how has your experience of living with DID and what has been your experience of,
So I'm high functioning.
yes?
And what that basically means is that as an adult, my
Mhm.
alters don't come out much.
Gotcha.
There have been a couple times when I get triggered, and I do a lot to actually control potential
Yes.
triggering circumstances. When I go to cafes or I go out to restaurants, I sit with my back to the wall if I can.
Mhm,
I
mhm.
always want to be able to see an exit.
Yep.
This is just a hypervigilance stuff. I was even recently speaking at Byron Writers Festival,
Yeah.
and I have a couple hundred people in the audience, and I'm scanning the audience, and on my altars are going, "Is there anybody here who's gonna get us?"
Potential threat.
So I have to let them do that, and I have to just make room in my head to allow these sorts of self-protective things to happen.
Yeah.
90% of the time, that works.
Mhm,
There are the odd occasions where it doesn't, and they come out pretty big time.
mhm.
It's as if I just sit on my shoulder and I'm watching somebody else do stuff, and I have no ability. And oftentimes, it's only for a few seconds,
Mm.
but it's just really full on, and it's like, "Holy cow, how did that happen?"
Wow.
But for the most part, it's okay. I get by. I've got 3 young adult kids. They all know I'm MPD and treat me with varying levels of deprecation because they love me and tolerate me and,
As they do.
as they do, which is nice because it normalizes things.
Yes.
They get that I'm MPD, but it doesn't make any difference to how they treat me, and I love that.
Yeah. That's the other thing that I wanted to ask you about. What I found very diametrically opposed to how I feel when I'm talking to a human being, I found some of what I experienced in mental health recovery was very much about pathologizing the problem. And then the person becomes the problem rather than the person who happens to live with a certain
Yeah,
difference.
yeah.
Do you find that, or have you found that's been a problem for you?
Hey, gorgeous. We interrupt this gold for a delicious invitation. If your whole body has been whispering more lately, more voice, more truth, more satisfaction, more clients of the soulmate variety, more cash, more you, then this invitation is for you. Potent, my sister mind is officially open. This is my high touch, holy fuck, I'm ready sister mind for rebels in good girl clothing who are done outsourcing their power and diluting their magic to fit into someone else's business formula. If you have been craving a space where your strategy, your voice, and your energy all get to be offered, honored, refined, and amplified, this is it. Inside of Potent, you'll get my eyes on your business every single week, copy mentoring, and that is for brand copy and content storytelling that turns your truth into client catnip, energetic recalibration that helps you unhook old learned limitation patterns, keeping you quiet, not being seen, not being heard, real-time, high-touch, one-on-one coaching that actually sees the bigness of your vision, and the kind of sisterhood that does not flinch when you show up in your full, messy, brilliant, phoenix rising from the ashes glory. This isn't surface level support. It's deep, potent, paradigm shifting work that changes who you are as a woman in business and a woman in life. We start in August. Early open access is open right now. For the month of June 2025, inside of this early access open doors period, you will receive juicy bonuses, extended payment plans, and access immediately to my entire library of storytelling gold. You'll find all the juicy details at kyliepatchett.com/potent. And we fill spaces, and there's only 10 of them, and more than likely only 5 by the time you listen to this, because by that time I will have offered them to the existing cohort, the beautiful original OG circle. We do actually take applications on a first come, first served basis. So come and apply, and let's get back to the magic of the episode.
That's a very good question. I'm not sure, quite honestly.
Mm.
To understand, so let me just do a quick linear description of my
Yeah.
life,
Mhm.
and then that'll help you to understand why it's hard for me to answer that
Yes.
question.
Go for
So
it.
I basically went away at the age of 3. when my family was immigrating from England to the US. I was on a boat and trauma happened, because I don't want to give too much away, because of course we want people to buy
Yes.
the book and be encouraged by it. And I went away and Annie came out. Now,
Gotcha.
all my alters in the book have pseudonyms, so that's actually not her real name, and all
Yeah.
the other alters that are mentioned, that's not their real names, but this is what we call her in the book.
Mhm.
So Annie came out, and so she was a system administrator, and she basically managed our childhood of abuse, teenage years, young adulthood, and all the dysfunction that went with that.
Yeah.
And then at some point, she just couldn't handle life anymore, and she said, "I'm going away, and I want you," and she pushed me back out. So there was a lot of misconceptions, the pathologizing and stuff that Annie has had to deal with.
Gotcha.
I also think that because my partner is Australian,
Mhm.
and when I moved to Australia, I think I felt like I was running away and that I could
Mhm.
just put it all behind me. Of course, that was really
Oh.
stupid,
Yeah, 'cause
and
there
I
you
get that.
are.
Yeah. So I'm just alone in this other
Damn
literally
it.
the other side of the world, and I've got
Mhm.
nothing, but I thought it was a fresh start. So I kept my MPD hidden. The only person who knew was my partner, and that was its own stupid thing to do in the first place. I just shouldn't keep it quiet, and it caused lots of issues.
Mhm.
But I have found as I've written and as I've started sharing my story, I the world has changed from when Annie was diagnosed,
Yeah.
and people are much more accepting. In fact, I
Mm.
was sitting with a friend the other night, and somebody was talking about dissociating up on stage, what we were watching, and I leaned over to my friend and I said, "Gee, I wonder if they're MPD." And
Yeah.
she and I cracked up laughing
Mhm.
because it normalizes things. And
Yeah.
my entire close friendship circle knows. In
Yeah.
fact, a lot more people know than
Well,
I
I was
think.
gonna say,
It's like
you gotta
my
let
book
the
came
cat
out.
out the
Yeah, a lot more
bag.
people know. And so I don't find it so much. So I'll tell you this story because,
Mhm.
and it's a good and it's a bad story. I was doing a talk in the Sydney area, uh,
Mhm.
and I knew that there was going to be somebody coming who I'd had some history with and who didn't
Mhm.
like me.
Gotcha.
And I was really quite terrified of them coming.
Mhm.
And I had some friends there who were really supportive. So that paragraph that I read to you,
Mhm.
the person who I was in conversation with, they read that paragraph at the start. And it's just such a beautiful way to open it up because
Mhm.
it makes it easier to talk about things rather than it being really dark. So we got to the Q&A time at the end, and this guy, he raised his hand, and my in convo friend, they took his question. He said, "You can say it's a creative way of coping, but at the end of the day, it's still a mental illness." And he just stared at
Wow.
me, and I went, "Actually, let's talk about the genetics of it. Let's talk about the trauma base, the creative response." And he goes, "It's still a mental illness." And I sat there and I went, "Okay." And I gave in and I powered back and I said, "You're right. In the DSM-5, it's talked about as a mental illness." And my friend, he was getting ready to go at me again, and my friend who was there, they saw what they were doing and he moved on to another person. And
Mhm.
I was so angry about that, but I was talking to the bookstore that was selling books the
Mhm.
next day when I was taking them some more, and she was saying, "That guy, that's the perspective you're trying to change."
Yeah, exactly.
And I thought, so every time I can, I tell that story
Yeah.
because I want people to know that we can think that, "Oh, we've come so far and we've done so much about reclaiming the space and normalizing," but there's still a lot of people out there who
Yeah.
really just wanna make it a psychosis.
Yeah. And
And
this
it makes
and
it easy for them to put you in a box.
correct. That's what
You
I
know,
was
they
just
hate
about to
you,
say.
and they just wanna put you in a
Yeah.
box, and so that makes it easy because you're just psychotic.
What do you think what do you think that him and other people who choose that perspective get from that? What is the gain for them to keep you in a box?
Power,
Mm.
because this was a guy who was significantly older than me, who
Mhm.
used to be a boss,
Yeah,
and he and
right.
I butted heads
Gotcha.
a lot.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah.
And ironically, I say this now and I laugh a bit. It's like within the first week of him hiring me, he said, "You're just not the person I hired." And I laugh at that now because I'm sure there was a bit of an influence with somebody who interviewed
Yeah.
and did a really good interview, but it wasn't me. But
Yeah.
anyway,
But,
I think a
Maggie,
lot of it is
sorry.
it is power. I it's I'm better than you are, and it's this need.
Mm,
We live in a world where people are always trying to one up each other and be
yeah.
better than other people,
Yeah.
and I am so on the kindness kick.
Mm,
It's I really believe that if we showed a little bit more kindness rather than judging other people, if we sat with someone, you don't have to have answers,
mm,
but if you sat with someone who was going through a hard time
yeah.
rather than shoving them off to a therapist, there'd be a lot less people going off to therapists because they felt like they had support groups.
Right.
That doesn't mean there isn't an important place for a therapist, and there's
Yes.
stuff that I tell my therapist about that I wouldn't even begin to discuss with other people.
Yeah.
But you still feel like you've got this nurturing support network.
Mhm.
And so I look at those people and I go, I feel sad for them
Yeah.
because they're really stuck in the dark ages of it- I need to judge you. It's that box thing and it gives me control
Yeah.
over you.
It's
And
us and them, and like
yeah,
any system of oppression, someone has to be above someone else. And it's
yeah,
if that fixed way of that you have to look at me and the way that I have experienced life through gives you a perception of more power than someone else. That is actually very sad when
it
you
is.
really look at it from a because imagine what he does to himself internally. Goodness
Oh,
gracious. Anyway,
yeah.
I love the kettle of fish. When you talk about Annie, how many do you remember d- when you were? So you went away at about 3, and
Yep.
so how old were you when Annie was like, "Okay, job done, I'm tired"?
Early 30s.
Yeah, so a long
Yeah.
time. And
So
and what do you
Annie,
call a systems manager?
she's a system administrator. Yeah.
Administrator.
Yeah,
I
it's
love
the
that.
easiest way because she would decide that one of the things in the book is that I use poems occasionally,
Mhm.
and I use them they're a bit of a breathing space, but
Mhm.
they also help to describe things that can be really that they need to be left in this poetic form
Mhm.
because they're easier to understand that way.
Yep.
So I've got a poem called Little Soldiers that talks about how Annie has all these soldiers, and it's like pieces on a game board where she knows
She
when they have to be moved and when they have to be shuffled
yeah,
around and what they have to do because they've got a job to do. And
yeah.
sometimes she was having to create new altars because of different types of abuse that were coming up. There are different systems that I'm aware of where some of the altars are they develop and then they live their life whole life. I have a lot of alters who live chunks of time. So they're stuck like on a hamster wheel and they can't get off. All they do is they experience their life at the age of 5, 7, or 9 or whatever,
Yeah.
and they can't get off of that. And
Mhm.
that's all they know.
I'm interested as you're speaking about all of the different altars, have you read or are you familiar with internal family systems kind of work? Do you know the work of Richard?
This is really interesting
Yes. Yeah.
because in fact, it was just last week.
Yeah.
I was talking to my therapist and he said, because I said, I've got this dysfunctional family in my head and it drives me crazy at times.
This is why I'm asking this
Uh,
question.
and his comment to me, he said, it probably shouldn't surprise you, but that a lot of the work that is starting to be done with especially I guess it doesn't matter, high functioning, low functioning, it doesn't really matter
Mhm.
with people with DID is family therapy
Yeah. Yeah.
because it's not necessarily about integration. Sometimes people do integrate, but it's about getting the system to work together
Correct.
so that we can live a happy life. So yeah, you're spot on with that. Spot
Yeah.
on.
It's interesting because when you said systems administrator, like I've only got a certain level of knowledge of the IFS work, but basically his concept is there are no bad parts. We form systems of different parts of ourselves who play different roles as a
Yeah.
protective mechanism
Yeah.
so that the wounded parts of us, the exiled kid parts, don't have to experience the pain.
Yep.
So when you say systems administrator, I'm like, oh my God, she
Yeah.
literally was
Yeah.
administering
Yeah.
like who's the
Yes.
best person to send to deal with this and to make sure that you at the heart of it, who has stepped back in your language,
Yep.
is still very protected.
Yep.
That. And again, I just want to say how bloody smart is your brain to be able to do that?
Yeah.
Like
Yep.
from a protective point of view, it's just astounding.
It's a blessing and it's a curse.
Yes.
It's caused me a lot of problems, but like I said, I wouldn't be here today if it weren't for the
Yeah.
creativity of my brain. So very
So
grateful.
how were you aware at all between those two ages, like 3 and the 30s, that there was alters? Wait, were you still observing, or at that time the alters were
Not
just doing the interacting?
It was as if I didn't exist. I was basically asleep in the farthest part of my head. And so what happened when I came back
Mhm.
was that, and more credit to me, I think, it
Yes.
took me about 30 seconds and I suddenly was like, okay, I have this file card system of all these experiences that I would see. I call them postcard images.
Yes.
And I knew I was MPD. And so that began a 6 to 8 month period where I had to reconcile everything. And I was grateful because I didn't have to learn how to, like, I worked in an administrative job. I didn't have to learn how to type on a computer. I didn't have to relearn how to use systems.
Yeah.
That was all handed off to me in a very seamless way. It was the
Yes.
memories of our childhood
Mhm.
and those things that were, a lot of them I still haven't seen, and I don't
Mm.
necessarily need to see
Yeah.
them all,
Yes.
but it's like there's these postcard images that I have where there's an image there and I know that there's an altar attached to it, and do I or don't I need to know their story so that we can process
Mm.
their pain? Because they have their own pain.
Yes. That's the other thing that I'm wondering, because I think I hope that part of the change that you're experiencing in terms of people being more open and more aware and less like that man, like,
Yeah,
let's
yeah.
kind of call him where we're moving away from.
Yes, yes.
Maybe part of that is because we are talking more about trauma, and even, as you're saying, like dissociative, even in the kind of somatic coaching, trauma healing world, there's a lot of that sort of fight, flight, freeze,
Yeah,
dissociate, check out,
yeah,
that kind
yeah.
of. So I guess it's more in the vernacular or something, is what I want to say. But I just wonder, because when you're reading something about trauma healing, for instance, like when you're reading it, you're talking about one self who's had experiences. But with you and your alters, does it feel like you've got multiple sets of stories or anchors to heal? Like
Absolutely.
everyone has their own.
Everybody's got their own
Wow.
life. They've got their own voice. They've got their own image. They've got their own, what's their motivational factor that drives
Mm.
them? I've got one alter in the book. I call her Pretty Girl.
Hmm.
And so let's just say that we didn't meet up to mother standards of what she
Yes.
wanted for a daughter. That's
Yep.
probably the easiest way to put it.
Yep.
I was
Hmm.
fat. I was ugly. I was not anything that she wanted. And mother was also a gifted painter, and she would paint some of these images. And Pretty Girl, there was one particular image that mother painted that she thought was the most beautiful painting she'd ever done, and it was this young, pretty blonde girl,
Hmm.
and with beautiful clothes on and all this sorts of stuff. And so Pretty Girl basically said, "That's who I'm going to be.
Yeah.
I'm going to be so pretty that will get mother to love us."
Yep.
And while she has no trauma, she holds a longing for love that mother never gave her. And so she basically, all she does is she sits and she waits.
How many different alters are you aware of now?
Thank you for saying aware of, because I don't know how many I
Yeah,
have.
but that's
Um,
why
yeah,
I'm
um,
that's why I'm choosing that language, because I'm like,
um,
yeah.
probably 30 to 40. So one of the things that is, so every system for
Hmm.
someone who has MPD,
Hmm.
there's a way that it's organized so that things aren't chaotic all the time.
Yes.
And the more locked down that organization is, the less chaotic things are. My system is organized in a house.
Gotcha.
And I've
Okay.
actually got a whole chapter in the book that talks, I wander through the house and I just try to get to know it and figure out what it's really. And there is an attic door that's got a
Hmm.
padlock on it and a lot of bolts on it.
Gotcha.
And let's just say I am fearful of what's behind that. And at my age, I'm not actually sure that I need to go there.
No.
If I've got enough other stuff in my life, I don't need to go there.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. When so Do you feel like there's still, like you were saying before, some of them feel like they're kind of the way that I'm, because I'm a visual person as well,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
the way that I'm imagining is they're almost in a bubble of a certain amount of years or a certain amount of like
Yep.
experiences or whatever.
Yep.
So, of the ones, as we're talking, are there alters watching us talk, or like, do you experience, and then are you therefore having multiple different experiences of our conversation? My brain is just,
Uh, I love it when a neurotypical person tries to understand how
not
my brain
typical.
works. There you go. So I have alters that just ignore what I'm doing. It's little kids, and
Mhm.
they're stuck in their own trauma, so they don't see things. But there's a couple of the alters that have grown up.
Gotcha.
Um, Annie grew up, and so she's very aware of what's going on.
Mhm.
She's not convinced that this is the right way to go, talking about it, even though she likes to write too. She's not convinced of it. But I do have one particular alter named Angie.
Yeah.
She's not in the book, who is utterly and absolutely convinced that the best thing that we can do is to talk about our history and to actually laugh about it at times and tell some funny
Mhm.
stories or insightful stories from a place of healing so that
Yes.
other people are more comfortable talking about it, because it's a heavy topic with
Mhm.
heavy trauma and people go, "Ooh, can we talk about this? Should we talk about this? Blah, blah, blah." And I just want them to know you can ask me anything. And if I don't want to answer it, I'll just
You'll
say
just
no.
say,
I'll just
yeah,
say no. I
yeah.
had session with a lovely author once on my book. And she told me at the end of our session, she said, I always get nervous when I go into these mentor sessions with writers who have trauma as history because I don't know how fragile they're going to be. And she looked at me and she said, You are not fragile.
Mm.
And I said, No, I'm not. In
No.
fact, I
Yeah.
get more upset when people try to pretend I am fragile because I'm not.
It's irritating. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. The resilience has driven this adaptation, right?
Mm,
That is the opposite of fragile.
yeah.
As you were writing the book, were those two parts that you just explained to us, like Annie and Angie, did they feel like they were at odds with each other? Because Annie is not convinced, but Angie is and is.
So I'm gonna add another layer to this for
Yes,
you.
please do.
Angie doesn't care about the writing. She
Uh-huh.
just wants to talk about it.
Talk about it.
She
Gotcha.
uses
Okay.
for her, she sees the book as a tool till she just talks about it. So she sits on my shoulder and how can I phrase it? She doesn't talk through me. So she's not talking right now,
Yeah.
but she gives me the strength and confidence to be able to talk and
Right.
to be comfortable talking.
Yeah.
So the two alters that are at odds, so you've got Annie
Mm-hmm.
who just who's really struggling with this whole process. Then you've
Yes.
got Ryder, and
Mm-hmm.
Ryder is probably my only alter that is, non-gender. They're just
Yeah,
this
gotcha.
gray fog.
Yeah, yeah,
All of
yeah.
my alters are girls, although I
Mm.
did have a friend tell me, he said, "Do you realize you refer to Ryder as a he the other day?" And I was like,
Ah.
"Oh, it's not a
Yeah,
big
yeah.
deal to
What?
me."
Yeah,
But,
yeah.
it was so to me, they're just this gray fog, and they really have this compulsion for us to write, and then it's in the writing that's healing. My current therapist gets very concerned if I'm not writing
Yeah.
because he says, "If you're not writing, you're not processing."
Yeah. Yeah.
So
I
those are the ones that get at odds with each other.
Yeah, interesting. Have you ever had conversations, particularly like the project, the first one that I saw you
Yeah,
actually, what, as you were talking, what really captured me when I was watching that interview was yes, it's the opposite of fragility, just
yeah,
that grounded way that you spoke about everything was so matter of fact, but also in a way that, yeah, could pop those perception bubbles that
yeah.
people have.
I like that
It's like,
perception bubble, that's good.
yeah, it's because they're just one lens of seeing someone
Yeah,
through.
yeah.
That doesn't mean that they're not. It doesn't mean they're correct.
No,
Yeah,
and it also doesn't mean that they won't change either. It's just
correct.
we all see life through a particular pair of rose-colored glasses, and sometimes they're pretty foggy and they aren't truth. So,
Mm, yeah,
I'm happy to provide some truth to that wherever I can.
yeah, so good, so good. Do you feel like there will ever be a time when you're not experiencing life with the awareness of alters?
No,
Mm.
the other way to say that is, will I ever integrate? And no,
No.
I don't think I ever will. I would like to be a more functional, dysfunctional family than we are right now.
Yeah.
I'm just so used to it, and I'm so comfortable with it. I think it would be way too quiet in my brain if I didn't have them. I
Yeah.
think that might scare me,
Mm.
to not have these segmented bits that are helping me process things.
Mm.
I can have a feeling or I can see a memory
Mhm.
and I can keep going about my day. And I know that the
There's
girls are actually processing it for me. And then at the end of the day, I come back to my journal and I write about it, but they've done the processing. I think my therapist would like to see me actually process more of that stuff myself because it means I'm owning it. But I'm pretty okay not owning
Gotcha.
it, quite
I don't know,
frankly.
that sounds really bloody cool to me
Yeah,
because then
yeah,
I could be, like, processing whilst I'm
yeah.
going about my business.
The
Um
negative side of that is that I probably don't feel the depth of emotion that a
Yes.
lot of people would feel. There's been the odd moment when I've got to maybe a 4 or 5,
Mhm.
but I have got other alters that I've got one that just basically lives at a 10 with anger.
Yes.
So, I'm grateful that they hold that anger away from me and from the
Mhm.
rest of the girls, but it means that I don't experience the full spectrum of joy or sadness or
Mm.
grief or happiness, whatever it might be.
Mhm.
I don't necessarily experience all that. It's a bit of the trade-off for staying safe.
Because it feels like it's dampened down by because if it goes too extreme, it feels like a threat, and so an altar
Yeah.
will scoot
Well,
away.
it would be all my trauma, historical trauma would be hitting me all at
Yeah,
once, and
of
it's like,
course.
you
Which
know,
you would never yes.
no, who
Yeah.
wants to go there?
No,
So,
exactly. Goodness gracious. I'm curious with the writing because I'm one of those people that knows that she's better when she does journal every day and resists it all the time for exactly what we're talking about, that a lot of stuff will come to the surface for me, and I'm
yeah,
like, "I don't wanna deal with that right now." But I am currently on a consistency of journaling. I'm
good.
interested when you say you've been working with 4 different people across is that since your 30s? Like, when did you actually
No, so I my first my first counselor that I went to was in
Mhm,
college, and
mhm,
I was sent because I was behaving erratically,
mhm,
and the dean of women said, "You really need to go see someone."
mhm.
And so I went and saw them. And they didn't diagnose me with MPD, but I don't think that, and that would yeah, see, we Annie was not aware at that point that she was
Yes.
MPD. She
Gotcha.
had gotten away from home, so she was just living this highly dysfunctional life.
Yeah.
And we didn't trust, Annie didn't trust that we could actually process the pain of our history.
Mhm.
Then I moved and was seeing, I call them shrinks, by the way, in my book, shrink 1, 2, 3, and 4,
Yeah.
because I want I've had a mentor and a psychologist both challenge me and say, "They should have real names." Sorry, I'm digressing here.
Yeah, no, that's all right.
But,
I'm interested.
I it was important for me. She said that they said they're real if you give them names. They become much more real, more real people. I'm like, "But
Okay.
I don't want them to be real because therapists live in a box.
Yeah.
They're a safe place, and they're quiet,
Mhm.
and they stay there. They don't get out of that box. So I
Correct.
don't want them to have that personalness to them. I needed them to stay
Mhm.
separated." And once I explained it that way, they're like, "Yeah, okay, it's your book. Do whatever you
Yeah,
want."
exactly. It's my life, in fact.
Yeah, pretty much, yeah. I went to see number 2 because I was getting we were getting really upset at work and things were happening. So this is one of the challenges I have. I say "I," but it's me, it's we, it's us,
Yeah,
Annie,
I've no
it's just all over the place, and, I haven't figured out how to do that yet. It's alright.
maybe you don't
Um,
have to.
but so I went to see him, and I'd been seeing him for probably 3 or 4 years,
Mhm.
before something happened. Annie was driving somewhere and she had an emotional response and had felt like she was physically being ejaculated all over.
Mm.
And basically, that opened up discussions about abuse.
Yeah.
And then from there, and didn't know that he actually specialized in MPD. And so he was
Interesting.
able to pick up on it quite quickly
Yeah.
and start worked with her for that she was seeing him for about 10 years before we moved to Australia.
Mhm.
And then I didn't see anybody for a long time because I was really hoping that it wasn't gonna be an issue in my life, and my life was falling apart, when we'd moved up here to the Northern Rivers,
Yeah.
and I went and saw someone who didn't get it.
Mhm.
Uh, Lovely person, but they really didn't get it, and I think that I had to take control, and I did a lot of research and a lot of digging, and I
Mhm.
found the number 4 who I'm currently with, and
Mhm.
they're not the most experienced MPD clinician in the world, but they understand how it works,
Mm.
and I've been with them for about 8 years now.
Wow. It As you were talking, do you feel like Annie needed to have that amount of time with that first person to even allow something to come to the surface that might suggest that you had alters, or do you just feel like it was a trigger and that's just how it unfolded? There was no
I
kind
think it
of
was more that's just how it unfolded. She
yeah.
actually resented having to go because it was a condition
Ah,
of her staying in that
interesting.
college that she
Gotcha.
had to go and get therapy, and it was the
Gotcha.
person that they recommended. And look, they were a lovely person,
Yeah.
and I wish them all the best, but they wouldn't have had this would have been in the, mid-80s.
Yeah.
So, a long time ago. In fact, I'm not even
And
sure if they're still alive.
s-
So, the
so
world was
many
different. This
yeah.
world was really different
Oh
then.
goodness, yes.
So,
So
yeah,
many
yeah,
misconceptions.
yeah.
Wow. So writing wise, when did you first understand that writing was going to be part of a toolbox, I want to say, although that's such a hard word.
Uh,
Like
um,
that was helpful. When did
yeah.
you figure that out?
I Annie so what happened when Annie started seeing Shrink Number 2,
Hmm.
she just clammed up and refused to talk about anything.
Gotcha.
As a high school student, she'd done a couple of very creative writing projects and got
Hmm.
a lot of kudos for those,
Hmm.
but she hadn't really seen it as anything she could really do, and a lot of dreams she had around writing just fell apart.
Yeah.
So Shrink Number 2 asked her, "Could you just start keeping a journal and bringing it in, and maybe that'll be a way for us to talk?"
Mm.
And she just lapped it up. It was like that was the Katie bar the door, the floodgates opened, and she was writing not just prose, but poetry and all sorts of stuff that gave him lots, I think, of information to help with that. So she found that very cathartic.
Hmm.
I didn't write for the longest time till I
Mm.
got here, but when I decided to start seeing a therapist again, I was like, "Okay, I know that worked for Annie then, so I'm gonna try it
Yeah,
now." And
gotcha.
it's been really good. It's been really good.
Wow.
Oh, yeah.
What do you since the book has been released, what has been something that surprised you about like you've obviously you've done lots of interviews, you've been at the writers' festivals and things.
Yeah.
What's something that surprised you about what people want to know or what they think or whatever, positive, negative, whatever? Is there something that's come out of left field or is it all stuff that you've expected, which is just stereotype?
Oh, I hate the word stereotype.
Sorry.
No, it's okay. I think there are a lot of similar questions,
Yeah.
that people ask, and
Mhm.
that's absolutely fine.
Yeah.
I think the things I actually enjoy the smaller groups
Mm,
of 15 to 20
yeah.
where it becomes much more intimate and
Yeah. Yeah.
it's about, "Let's just talk. What do you wanna know?" And
Yeah.
and while some of it's the same, some of it's not.
Yeah.
People get really hung up on the fact, so my name's Maggie,
Yeah.
then you've got Annie, and
Hmm.
people go, "So, were you Annie as a kid, or were you Maggie
Oh.
as a kid?" And all this
Yeah.
sort of
Yeah.
stuff, and it's, they're looking for some sort of really funky kaleidoscope answer,
Yeah. Yeah.
and
Right.
I just really can't help them,
Sorry to
you know?
disappoint you,
Yeah,
folks.
pretty much, and it's funny because it just goes to show that some things aren't that big a deal. It was just
Yeah.
it was a choice. I met my partner online
Yeah.
and wanted to use a pseudonym, so I used Maggie, which
Mhm.
happens to be our first name,
Mhm.
and Annie is our second name, so
Mhm.
it was like it just stuck, and so I've been using that ever since, and so, yeah, so nothing highly complicatedly or MPD oriented about that, so that one's
Yeah.
been kind of yeah.
Have you had people that also live with NPD that have come and asked you questions or because when I'm interviewing someone what I know to be true about sharing stories is that it is both cathartic for the person who's speaking, but very often cathartic for the people listening
Yeah.
because they see part of themselves or they feel seen and heard for the first time or whatever.
Yeah.
Have you had those
I have
conversations?
had a couple of those, and it's really made my heart sing.
That's
Um,
so good.
and I'm sure that there are people out there who've come to talks and they haven't been willing to open up about their own diagnosis.
Mhm.
But it was at the same talk that I did where this guy pegged me and tried to make me out to be a lunatic. I had actually
Mm.
forgotten because the standard question is how do you develop MPD? So I gave him the outline, but I forgot to talk about how a child feels trapped and
Mm.
they couldn't get out of that. So
Yes.
this woman, and it was just a group of probably 40 people. So it wasn't a small audience.
Yeah.
And she stood up in the back and I could tell she was really nervous. She said, I just want to make sure that people understand that the other element that you haven't talked about is how children can feel really trapped.
Right.
And she said, and the reason I can say that is, and she's, I'm MPD. And I was just so happy, and I was so proud of her.
Oh,
I didn't make a big deal out of it at that
yeah,
point
yeah,
because
yeah.
in a group of people, you don't wanna do that. But I just said, "Thank you so much. You are absolutely right, and
Mm.
good on you for speaking up."
Aw.
Afterwards,
Mm.
there were 2 people. It was
Mhm.
her, she came up to get a book and signed it, and I just told her how proud I was of her
Yeah.
and to keep owning it and to keep living her best life and
Yeah.
to make sure she had good help. I had
Mhm.
another lady come up to me. She leaned across the table as I was signing the book, and she said, "I just need to tell you, I'm not out of the closet yet." And I was like, "You know what? The fact that you've told me is really special,
Yeah.
and make sure you take care of yourself, and you may never be ready to come out of the closet, and you
Mhm.
just do whatever is best for you."
Mhm.
So, those sorts of things are really encouraging. I have had family members, I have had friends of people who have MPD come up to
Yeah.
me and go, "It's just so nice to hear of this in such a relaxed context."
Yes. Yep. Absolutely.
Um,
Absolutely. And the more that we talk and the more that people can see themselves or see people that they love who also are experiencing the same thing. Yeah, it just, I don't know, it just breaks down barriers. Like every time I speak to people who've dealt with something tricky, tricky, that is completely underplaying what we're talking about.
alright.
Challenging,
Yeah,
traumatic,
yeah,
again and again, just there's two things that I always walk away with. First of all, the resilience of the human spirit
mm,
to keep on keeping on and learn ways around things. And then the other thing is the gift that sharing your experience ripples out into the world
it
because
sure does.
it's
It
the
sure
things
does.
that we don't say out loud that hold the most power. It's the things that we're guilty about or ashamed of or don't want to say because we think that there's something wrong with us or
Yep,
whatever. And then when you actually say something and someone else hears themselves or
yes,
you're like, oh,
mm,
it's a crazy,
yep.
I don't know, ripple of relief.
Oh,
Um,
it absolutely is.
when you were talking about your kids before, so are they almost adults, teenagers?
17, 19, and 21.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah,
Cool.
yeah,
My daughters are 19 and 20 the
there
week
you
that
go.
we're
Yeah.
recording this. So
Oh,
similar to the older two.
my eldest is a girl, and then I've got
Yeah.
2 boys. They're all 3 of them are adopted from the Philippines
Oh wow.
because I couldn't have kids because just physical damage.
Yeah.
And my daughter came with me on my first book tour, and she's my little social media guru, and she was just fabulous, and she in fact, I've got a note, it's 6 here on right on my screen,
Yeah.
and she says, "I love you, mom. You were so amazing. Your story and how far you've come. I'm so proud of you." So I leave that. She put that on a sticky note, and I keep that on my
Oh,
computer, which is really sweet. And the boys have been fabulous. They're buffy, older teenage boys, but
yeah.
they've been absolutely fabulous too. They're just it's that social media thing of if you're if kids are on social media, they just start liking things and following people and whatever. And
Hmm.
I was very concerned. They all knew that I had a traumatic history,
Hmm.
but I hadn't told them about the MPD. And I remember the day that I decided if this book is going to come out, they need to know because I'm
Yes.
going to be doing social media posts. And if
Hmm.
their friends see it, I don't want them to be blindsided by someone saying your mother's a schizo or something like that.
Yeah.
And as that's just what teenage boys do. They're
Yeah.
just very
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
calloused and unthoughtful.
Hmm.
And it's a phase they go through. I know that.
Yeah. Thank God
Um,
they get through it.
and honestly, my boys were just so beautiful. I took them out to lunch out at Ballina. We had fish and chips by the pier, and
Yeah.
we were talking, and then we started discussing stuff, and I told them about it. And they got really quiet, and they listened, and I said, "I just want you prepared in case any of your friends say anything to you."
Mhm.
And they said, "You know what, Mom? We don't care, and if they can't handle it, that's their problem because we know who you are."
Yeah. Oh,
And I was like, "My kids, they're just beautiful."
yeah.
Uh,
Beautiful humans.
they're still rat bags.
Course.
They're supposed to be at that age, which is a good thing.
Exactly,
It
exactly.
means
That's
they're
what
flying free.
yeah, when you were saying deprecating before, sorry, wrong word. And I was like, "Yep, that sounds about right." At that
Pretty
age,
much.
do they what has been something have they had any backlash from friends or anything that they've had
No,
to
I
deal
don't think so.
deal with?
In fact, you'll appreciate this.
Yeah.
So my youngest is probably my most unashamedly verbal,
Yep.
but he does it in a way that puts him at the center of things rather
Mhm,
than me.
mhm, mhm.
And the people at the project asked if he would come and be interviewed, if
Yeah,
any of the kids would. And
yeah,
he actually, the other two were like, "Nah, not a chance." And he said, "Yes, I'm happy to be interviewed."
yeah.
Here's Georgie, and he just thinks that she's the most gorgeous thing since sliced bread. Can
Yes,
hardly get a
well,
word
she
out.
is.
She was lovely to talk to
Yeah.
and just really chilled. And so he's talking to her. Obviously, he ended up on the cutting room floor. He was
I know, I was
so
like, "I don't remember that."
no, he was so disappointed. He said, "Mom, the dog got more airtime than I did." And I'm like, "Yeah, you're right, sweetheart. What can I say?"
Hard for
Yeah.
a teenage
Um,
ego too.
oh, because what I didn't know, because I was actually on the road when the project thing aired,
Mhm.
he was doing an online watch party with some of his mates, and it wasn't about his mom who was dealing
Oh,
with
it was
mental illness. It's about he was supposed to be on the TV show, and of course they gave him such a hard time about it. Oh, and that was okay. It was absolutely fine,
funny.
but they've been great in their own ways, and it's all become very normalized. We talk about
Yeah.
things around the dinner table now, and they've seen me flip out a couple times and
Mhm,
be triggered,
mhm.
and they've gone, "Were you?" And I said, "Yes, I was."
Yeah,
And we'll
yeah.
talk about it and talk about
Mhm.
which altar it was and why it happened
Yes.
and the history behind it, and they're really good.
Yeah. So this would have been in the last year that you've shared it with your kids?
Yes.
Yeah. Did you make a conscious decision not to before or you what was the because it
Shame. It was shame. I was so still
yeah.
and I still do to this day. I still feel ashamed this is who I am at times.
Mm.
And I know that a lot of that comes from my altars. I get that. So
Yeah,
this is where
okay.
my segmented life actually helps out.
Yes.
Um, but also they didn't they're adopted, so they've got their own complicated lives.
Yes. Yeah.
And what I did is as they got old enough to understand, I would share with them. They go, "We see Nan and Pop, my partner's parents, and
Gotcha.
I
Why
said, 'What
don't we
about your
see?
parents?'" Well, early on, it was like, "They're just really bad people," and then it turned into, "They abused me," and so this was like just the icing on the cake
Yeah.
in the terms of helping them to understand what the whole picture looked like,
Yeah.
and they were old enough to be able to comprehend it.
Yeah. It is as you're talking about it, the language in my head is like age appropriate because I
Yeah,
guess how the hell do
you
you
couldn't tell that to a
explain? No,
12-year-old.
like
Yeah,
they wouldn't have the understanding or
yeah,
perspective to understand.
that's
Um,
exactly right.
when you think about parenting, because how has parenting been for you, having been through a childhood where your parents were not
Isn't that a
protectors
great
and
segue to my
not
next book?
that's where I want to end up. Yes.
Um, look, I'm still trying to understand how it is that I'm not redoing the abuse that my mother did to me.
Yes.
But my mother, she had did some abuse, but most of hers was basically grooming and handing me over to father and backing off.
Yeah.
And what I have come to understand is that she would have been as much a product of an abusive childhood And I also believe from things that I've learned through some research I've done that father was abusing her and threatening her.
Yeah.
And so I'm trying to paint a picture of that. I'm trying to understand
Mhm.
who my mother was
Yes.
and what is it that I've been able to do
Mhm.
that has broken that cycle so that my kids live, for all intents and purposes, really a fairly normal, ordinary life.
Yeah.
And at the end of that, I'm going, the big thing that I have to wrestle with is forgiveness.
Mm.
And that's a very difficult one. And I'm very careful about how I say it because that's not a place where a lot of trauma survivors can or should go. And everybody's got their own journey, and I respect that. But for me, I'm sitting here going, first of all, the justice that they got was that they died without having a relationship with their daughter.
I actually was going to ask, have they passed or
Yeah,
not? Because
yeah,
I
yeah.
yeah,
So they've
gotcha.
died.
Mhm.
And as I've been putting the story together, I'm going, isn't I hate the word revenge, but isn't my best growth, revenge, whatever you want to call it, actually living a good life
Yeah.
in spite of what happened? And for me, part of that is understanding who they were. And I've
Yes.
learned a few things about father's background, lots of alcohol, a very disturbed childhood. They are products of their own environment.
Mhm.
And is there a way, and I haven't gotten there yet,
Mhm.
but is there a way that I can forgive them? And you can forgive without accepting.
Mhm.
Forgiveness is there, but that doesn't mean there aren't consequences for that behavior that they've had.
Yes.
That forgiveness is like forgiveness that makes me whole.
Yes.
I think trauma survivors will understand this when I say this, that we also need to forgive ourselves
Mm.
because we have learned maladaptive behavior,
Mhm.
whether it's my alters or whether it's just i- promiscuity or whatever that they've turned to, drugs, alcohol, whatever they've turned to as
Yeah.
their escape mechanism.
Mhm.
That they need to be able I should need to include myself in this, need to be able to forgive ourselves for, and that is the ultimate healing. So that's what I'm trying to wrestle with, just a small little topic.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, yeah. No,
Just
not
not
big. You should
um,
be able to do that in a paragraph or 2.
that's what I'm trying to wrestle with, and I've done a lot of work over the last few days on it, and
Mhm.
I think I'm finally happy with the structure and
Mm.
some of the mechanisms and how I wanna tell it, so
Yeah. As you're talking, I can hear you seeking understanding, and there's a sense of, I can understand where their behavior came from because of how they were brought up. And yet you have somehow been able to not repeat
yeah,
and not expose your children to the
yeah.
same behavior. So I imagine does it feel like a fine line to walk? Because
It does. I made some notes this morning.
mm,
I wrote down because 'cause I'm trying to figure out how do I end this book,
mm,
and I wrote down here on my little trusty little note, "How did I break the cycle?" And mine is that I have hope, and
mhm,
I don't believe my mother ever had hope. She got stuck in a cycle, and she couldn't get out of it,
mm,
and she didn't have the ability to get out of it, so I have hope for a future. Even at 63, I've got 20 or
wow,
30 years left ahead of me
yeah.
where I can be doing lots of stuff, and I can do it with hope and happiness.
Mm. Do you think that sense of hope comes directly from the fact that you did go away at 3, and the sense of your alters being, I don't want to say this the wrong way, but the picture that I'm getting in my mind is, does the hope come from the fact that your brain has adapted, created alters, the alters experience the pain, and so it still keeps you and your sense of hope intact? I don't know whether I'm asking that the right
Yeah,
way, but that's
look, my sense of hope comes from I'm a detective, and it actually drives Annie crazy because I wanna try and figure things out, and it's like when I start getting some understanding,
yes.
I go, "Okay,
Mm,
that makes sense.
sense. Yeah.
I
I
get
like
it.
that too. Yeah.
Okay,
Mhm.
yeah,
Mm,
let's move on."
yeah.
So it's not this, "Oh, I have a hope in this big, beautiful, wide future." It's I have a hope in that my life actually can make sense. Because for the longest time, my life didn't make sense.
Yeah.
But as I'm putting these pieces together, understanding the roles that the girls have in our life, it's like it's starting to make sense. It's not there yet. I had an author friend who she sent me a note after she read the book, and she said, "I really appreciate" she said, "You got to do this as an indie publisher," and I didn't because she was traditionally published. Her trauma story was about the editor kept saying, "But you need to put hope at the end of this. You need to make it a pretty let's wrap it in a bow, pretty picture." And she said what they didn't understand was that you can't do that with trauma. It's always with you. She said, "What you did at the end of your book is you painted a picture of hope, but it was pragmatic. This is gonna be with me forever, and I need to be comfortable with how I'm living my life."
Yes. It's not a Hallmark version of hope. It's an
No.
actual something you can
Well,
hold on
yeah,
to.
yeah.
So when can we expect the new book? Do you want to publicly put a date? You don't have to. You don't have to.
I have no idea. So I'm not
Yep.
even finished with the first draft yet.
Yep.
I'm hoping to get it to a developmental editor by the end of the year.
Mhm.
I am putting pressure on myself to have it done by the middle of next year.
Gotcha.
Think that's really pushing it hard. Depends on what other hiccups come my way as far as
Yeah.
life
Yeah,
goes.
of course.
But I'm really hoping that I have it ready to go to press by the middle of next year.
Gotcha. And we've touched on a little tiny thread of it, but if you wanted to give our listeners an overview of the whole kit and caboodle, how would you wrap up the concept of the second? Because we've talked about the not repeating, but it's actually
Yeah.
about generational trauma and
Yeah. So
repeating
what I'm
cycles.
doing is I'm trying to weave the thread. What I want to do is I want to bring hope. And I use the thread of our adoption story, which while it has
Mm,
its hiccups in it, is a very positive story.
yeah.
And it's a wonderful story. So what I do is I use that and I as the backbone of my story. And on top of that, you've got my story about the adoption, you've got the kids' stories, you've got birth mother's
Mm,
stories, and you've got my mother's stories. So what I'm doing is I'm weaving it around all that and then interspersing with poems. I don't have that final structure there, but I know what I need to do and the pieces that I still need to write. And once I've got that, then I'll put the final structure together and get it off to a developmental editor.
sounds sorry. You go.
September is my month for getting the
See,
first draft done.
I cannot wait to read. I know I haven't said this in the interview, but I deliberately didn't read Split yet because I wanted to just have this interview be curiosity informed. Now I am going to go and finally read it. It's been on my bedside
You will
for about a
you will
month.
find that some of the things that I've alluded to will suddenly go, that makes
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah.
You know, so
Yeah. Oh, thank you so much for sharing so openly. I really appreciate it. I know that speaking about these things that people can have such inaccurate understandings of, no thanks to Hollywood, no thanks to sensationalize whatever. It's been an absolute honor. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much for coming and sharing.
Well, thank you for reaching out. I really appreciate it.
I'm glad that you didn't run away when we were driving to the Gold Coast. My husband and I was like, I've got to message that lady that was on the project last night. She was amazing. And he's like, okay, why don't you just do it now? And I'm like, and he's like, wow, you are full on when you say. I was like, well,
I
that's
love
my
it.
neurosparkliness coming
I
through.
love it. A neurosparkle. It's wonderful. We have a gift.
Oh, yes. Yeah, it is a superpower, definitely. Now, for everyone listening, I've put all of the links to what we've talked about down below. So there's a
Yep.
link to Maggie's website, a link to where you can buy a paper copy of the book, but also information about where you can get the EPUB digital
Yep.
versions.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for being here. And let's book in the second chat for the second book.
Absolutely.
out.
Sounds fabulous.
Thank you so much, Maggie. Have a great day.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks for tuning in to Wild and Finally Fucking Free. I'm Kylie, your host. And given that I know you would have enjoyed this episode, please do us a favor and subscribe, leave a review, and share it with fellow freedom seekers. Remember, being seen in all our mess and magic helps heal ourselves and the world. Because the world needs more wild and finally fucking free humans. Have a great day.